at work, and we're trying to gather it all back together. If there's no subsidize me if I lose my shirt in a bad investment, they haven't got any business telling the government to tax away the fruit of my labors. I know anyways that you can't own land. It'll be here long after I'm gone and buried in it, but by God, I've got the right to buy me a little peace and privacy without anybody's approval. Fairly Black, Cape Chin South. rode your first horse. You'll be able to do what you've always wanted. Try not to work too hard at it, and things should balance out. Virgo, August 23rd. Even in astrology altogether, that would also help. However, you won't be able to because the moons are waning over the planet Cubus, trying to square things with the universal flow. Pisces, February 20th, March 20th. The fish symbol speaks plainly for those susceptible to being caught in nets. Stop going with the flow, it says, and shift with drift. You get to explore new territory this way, and we get your name for the mailing list. What could be a better arrangement? Gathering together with Arians, Gabrielians, and Venusians might provide a bit of new hope for your bowling league. Buy a new hat. Aries, March 21st, April 19th. So you're socializing with the wrong crowd, eh? Well, how sure are you know what you're doing? Are you on drugs? Check into a detox center, then go for a trip. You will meet the one you've never dreamed of and live a more peaceful life. Stop being so afraid of shadows. It's what's behind them that counts. Say hello to a complete stranger, but watch your purse or wallet. For relaxation, turn off the TV and count the stars. You'll be all right if only you smile. Slam shopping by Jocko. I am looking for something an honest egg among the piles of manufacturers' droppings from the sky, inconveniencing my weekend exodus from work. Am I looking for a back scrubber, a toy, sneakers, or some gestalt to this debris leaking from the walls of rubber gloves, boxed light bulbs, and hosiery, the merchandise mortar failing to hold this place together. No two paths through the many levels ever seemed to meet, the mirrored walls tilted inward as if merchandise were falling into this store from some commercial infinity, and suddenly I panic and think the whole store is listing and the level of water bottles is rising. And I remember a story about a shopper who went crazy just as they were about to put the last brick in the week itself, throw open doors on Sundays so workers could spill from the moral cubicles of their jobs and into department stores. The wheels of fortune would soon spin with a perpetual motion, driven by those un-Newtonian equals and opposites, produce and spend. And so the crazy shopper, nuttier than Buccaneer Bob or Samurai Sid, and more powerful than Bandito Ray or Super Les, uprooted furniture, smashed mirrors and lampshades, clearing a space for breathing, for meditation, claiming a construction site for the mind. But I think it's all for nothing. I look around and I see everyone is breaking out in decals and trademarks, colorful diseases already infecting sweatshirts and jeans. I remember what I came here for now, fresh air, an escape from the company I serve. But now I would settle for the one thing that Rod Serling would go in circles trying to find, a door. And I scurry through the place, making my own aisles, slam shopping as well as the rest of them, except that this rat is about to abandon this shop. And then, da-da-da-da. Uh-oh, now we have a call by Rescue, who's Fido's American cousin, Metal Swap. This is a column with no rhyme or reason or sanity whatsoever. I'm simply wandering through the train spots from car to car, looking at all the strange people. But they're the people. That's the aliens invading my brain, cleverly disguised as thoughts and fantasies, and insidious plots. Are those synapses destroying ray guns they're carrying? All those mental warfare, no survivors, brain war 3, atomic weapons not allowed, turn right here, left, right. Okay, no, that was a close one. Suffering silvery sables of sugar and surrealist slivers of slimy sarsaparilla sliding sideways into my sarcophagus. Sarcasm, sarcoma circus. See the cancer acrobats, the tumor jugglers, laugh at the lipoma clowns, eat hot lead, commie running dog, pig dogs. Am I insane? Why, yes, thank you for asking. Boy, howdy. Susie Cream Cheese got her axe and gave her caddy 40 whacks, and when it happened she was done, she gave the Volvo 41. The yuppie symbol slaughter, the serial car killer, call out the mine police, her brains on a bender. I think I lost my mind as well. As you see, it's ended home. Little wrinkled gray thing. I don't believe it could have gotten too far. Famous outlaw artists. Buffalo Bill Van Gogh, Wild Bill Da Vinci, Hopalong Dowie, Wyatt Lautrec, Doc Whistler. Showdown at the Pastel Corral. Lot of mercy, Luke. Get the drop cloths out. The outlaw artists are heading this away, and it looks like a surrealist shootout. They're mean and nasty. They have no respect. Watch out for them. The outlaw artists are coming to your town. Go ahead, make my canvas. Suggested name for a comic book. Insane adolescent, horny oriental black belt, incredibly stupid mixed-up flatworms on drugs. What adventure. Thrilling scenes of death and destruction. Mind-bending plots as the mutated flatworms search for Ada Hammer Jones's brain. Munch, munch, chew, oh, what a treat for you. Ever think about advertising? Don't. Open warfare between lovers with no one able to negotiate a settlement. I cry for disarmament. I can live without arms if it will only bring peace in our time. Ooh, offensive cripple jokes. Don't send letters, folks. I'm getting ready to take a time warp vacation and won't answer them. Well, we have a poem by Audrey Collin entitled To George. Every day would find him a prisoner in a chair of wheels, looking and listening to the roar of waves rolling in from the Gulf of Mexico. He was there for a holiday, as were all of us, in the same hotel, each of us in our own way trying to survive and to even enjoy. We had left our troubles behind, most of us, that is, our cares hidden, unspoken, with one exception. I can see him now, brown eyes comprehending, a hint of a smile on his beautiful face, patient and gentle. A young man, his progress delayed in the prime of life for reasons unknown. Wondering, looking into the angry waves, though sometimes calm, a reflection of us all. No. Fiction time, yes. A story called Tag. Hard to believe that the search would end here. I was a little disappointed when it was finally over. Ended by accident. I guess that after all this time, and with my memory of him having remained unchanged since I last saw him, I had somehow expected more. The tall man in the dark uniform and the tall shiny boots who took my mother and sister from me, and who distributed death and torture with the same dispassionate calm he used when handing out candy to the little boys, seemed completely unrelated to the tired old man who shuffled carefully down the sidewalk and turned up the walkway to his house a few minutes ago. For 30 years I tracked him. For 30 years my friends and I followed false trails and cold leads which took us through the narrow streets of Paris, up the shimmering hills of Greece and over the smoking mountains of Argentina and Brazil. We would hear that he had been seen in San Francisco, and for days we'd keep a tight surveillance on an apartment, only to discover that the occupant had moved. But this time we've got him. There can be no doubt. But if the truth be told, we really found him quite by accident. He goes to church now. Can you believe it? Satan himself, with his own miserable death no longer far in the future, kneels down in the house of God every Sunday morning and pretends to pray. And he sings psalms, too. I have heard him myself, and the people around him cannot know what he really is. But old Mrs. Rosenthal, the woman I showed you earlier with the limp, old Mrs. Rosenthal, she knew him. She had recognized him as he walked past the cafeteria one day, and now we have him. Murderer? There is no murderer. There is just a law of nature. When I step on an ant, do I commit murder? When I eat my steak, am I accessory to murder? When I rid the world of a parasite, do I commit a crime? Even you did not understand the nature of our work or the importance of his role. For him, the solution was a personal matter, an act of spite and petty vengeance to imagined wrong. What he too was only playing out his part in the grand scheme of things, fulfilling his preordained destiny. He may have fancied himself as the planner, the great architect, but he was merely the vehicle. I was the instrument. I was death. I was the fire that climbed. So how many weeks did we watch? No, we don't remember. I have only been here for the last few days. There are still so many, you see, all over the world, and they still have many friends that help them. We are so few, and every year we become fewer and older. We too are getting old. But the world is young, is it not? And it forgets. And why should it care? Young people today have new memories and new concerns. Everybody is having to work harder to make ends meet, and they also have their own wars to remember, their own atrocities to reconcile. But we, the old people, still have great debts to pay, and even this miserable old man will not go unpunished. The tortured souls of thousands scream for justice, and the blood of our children still stain his hands. So we waited for weeks, and photographs were taken, and his dental records checked, and his house broken into so that his papers could be checked for positive identification. Even his fingerprints were matched. We do our job well. Do you know that he still keeps all his journals and records? They line the bookshelves of his study like rows of trophies. 30 years have brought him no shame. His own approaching mortality has taught him no fear. He has destroyed nothing all these years, and we will shoot him with the works of his own arrogance, and he will die in the Son of Israel, and the screams of his victims will finally be silenced as they go to rest at last. I know they are watching me. They have always been watching me, but their fear and their ignorance will keep them away. Their clumsy efforts to search my house and their furtive steps behind me in the streets are meaningless. The cowardly creepings of rats in the gutter, they still whine and babble at me even now, just as they did all those many years ago, unable to comprehend that I was simply a part of history then, just as I am part of the way that history is being written now, part of the march of progress. Their petty concerns and immaterial sufferings, their lame efforts at laying blame and extricating retribution are meaningless, not even worthy of footnotes in the thousands of pages of history that I have written, and which those who come after me will continue to write. The world does not listen to them now, just as it did not listen to them then. Even at the trial, the world was ashamed and turned its face away from the sight of the death of my friends and companions who were caught by the parasites. The world understands that it is only the power and force of the strong which will determine who survives, while the weak will always either serve or be eradicated. Such is the way of nature. Such is the way of history. And I am strong, and I have survived, and my legacy will be to light the way for future generations who will acknowledge the truth of my teachings. Today, we arrest him. And you can take all the pictures and write all the articles you like. At noon, he will leave the church, walk past the cafeteria, through the park, and up the street to his house like he does every Sunday. And I will meet him on the doorstep of his house and arrest him. Once again, I will stand before the monster, but this time it will not be as a frightened little boy, but as a grown man with the law of God's vengeance on my side. It took us 6 months to convince your government that this was the right man. Can you imagine? 6 months, during which he might once again have slipped through our fingers like the snake he is, and vanished to another country where we would then have had to start the process all over again. In spite of the fingerprints, the photographs, the evidence on the shelves of his own house, and the x-rays from the dentist, the officials would still not be convinced. But he goes to church, they said. Of course, I replied. That is part of his disguise. But he has broken none of their laws, they said. He is a fugitive from the divine justice of history, I replied. His crimes are against humanity and thus transcends the laws of any one nation. But he doesn't even look like the same man, they finally said. Let him die in peace. He is an old man, and what he may or may not have done was a long time ago. Let the dead bury their dead. All this they actually said, but the dead have waited too long to welcome him to their ranks, and the dead have such long memories. When his damned soul stands before divine judgment, it will be with the judgment of the world already branded upon his forehead: murderer of women and children, torturer, monster, Satan. Maybe God will punish him more harshly, seeing that we did not forgive and forget. All right, they finally said, take him. But in their eyes, and in the eyes of your government, and in the newspapers of your people, I will not be a hero. There will always be those who will say that he was not the right man, or that he did not commit those crimes, or that we conspired against him for some evil reasons of our own. Maybe you will be one, but it does not matter. I expect only one reward for my work, and that reward will come when his blood runs on the sands of my nation, when I see the evil die in those hateful eyes. The judgment of history is already with me, sooner than even I had thought. Already the world is beginning to doubt its own memory. How I laugh.
The new generations do not remember Dachau and Auschwitz, and they do not want to learn. Just as we always knew, the last victory must be ours. I am death, and my seed is in the soul of every man.
Time for more fiction, I think. When Sam left, a short story by When Samuel left, his family and friends were all surprised. But after they thought about it for a while, they said things like, thank God, coming. Or, I said to the wife just the other night, something is brewing in Sam. He's going to blow one of these days. Sam's wife was in shock for the first few months, but then she started to get used to it. She had the 2 little boys to keep her busy. After 7 years, she got a divorce and married an older man, a widower, one of her customers at the co-op. She is quite happy, but not totally. She still feels guilty that Sam must be back someday. Sam left 11 years ago. If he ever came back and you asked him why he left, if he was truthful, he'd say, I just couldn't cope anymore. Little things nagged at him. You're worried about everything in general. At night when he tucked his sons in bed, he would pray for a nuclear holocaust. If everyone died, and the world came to an end, it would eliminate all of his problems. And if someone else did it, there was no guilt. Sam went to his doctor for a checkup and told him he was tired and uptight all the time. The doctor referred him to a psychiatrist who gave him prescriptions for Valium and lithium and told him to take a leave of absence from work. Take a month off. Relax. Start walking. Buy yourself a new suit. Sam looked at the gas station. If he asked for a month off and told his boss why, he would be fired. He had one perfectly good suit he never wore, so why buy another one? He had time to walk and work all day. So Sam took the Valium and lithium at night because he was during the day he was sluggish and drowsy. On the morning when Sam left, he got up early. It was only 5:15. The lithium made him thirsty, and when he woke up, he was wide awake and craving a cup of tea. He eased himself slowly out of bed so as not to wake up his wife, put on his slippers and housecoat, and went downstairs to the kitchen. He made the tea and sat down at the kitchen table in front of the window that looked out into the backyard. The sun was just rising. Just to the fir trees at the edge of his property was starting to grow. The yard was incredibly peaceful. Nothing moved. He watched the black grass start to turn green, beginning to glisten as the sun passed through. The trees mesmerized him. It offered himself to him. And after all those months of inner turmoil, he accepted. Sam left the old reality and life. Sam became a drifter. At first he didn't travel too far from the places he knew, but as he became accustomed to his freedom, he started drifting further and further afield. He went to Egypt and touched the pyramids. He traveled to China and saw the Great Wall. He met other drifters. One in particular, Amelia, traveled with him for some time. Amelia was married to an electrician and had 5 children. After the birth of her fifth, she went into a deep depression. One morning, when the baby was 3 weeks old, she got up to feed him. It was 4 a.m. After she had nursed him and changed his wet diaper, she laid him down in his crib and went into the kitchen for a cup of hot milk. Her mother had told her, always remember when you place the milk, the baby takes some. She turned the oven on low, pulled the kitchen chair up in front of it, and rested his feet on the oven door while she took some of the hot milk. The house was quiet. The heat from the oven was warm and wonderfully comfortable. For the first time in years, Amelia felt relaxed and content. She knew she could feel this way forever if she just let go and let. So she did, without any guilt. Amelia severed the cord and set her soul adrift. Sam and Amelia drifted together for a while, but their interests were different, so they each went their own way again. Sam wanted to see the moon, and then it was Mars, and then Pluto. Finally, he got up the courage to travel to each universe. As he went to the hospital for the mentally ill, Sam knew his body was being well looked after. He was fed, bathed, and exercised regularly. If Sam ever decides to come home, his body will be with him. Well, folks, things in relation, who knows? In the vernacular of the modern business world, there are a few anomalies that will have to be addressed by the head honchos in the front office. Things are reaching a point of no return. Two of these things are Fred and Luke. Fred, the production manager, isn't with it anymore. He is no longer upwardly mobile, according to his peers in our labor. Fred has been on the slippery slope for some time now, at least since the company diversified and switched from focus to silicon chips and computers. To think that Fred was a real macho man when he first joined the club. Now he can't seem to get his act together, let alone computer production. It's crazy news. Of course, no one likes to downgrade likable Fred, but some would say, especially those envious of his job, that he's had the course, that he should be put out to pasture, and that he just doesn't seem to know where it's at anymore. Some would even shuffle him sideways to smarten him up. Others maintain that he should be prematurely de-employed unless he gets with it and turns things around. But Fred just smiles that knowing little smile. And the firm's girl Friday, Lucy, the sexy invoice clerk. She isn't too swift either. 10 times her time doing her own thing. Even the cost accountant has had it up to here with her because he can't get the first base with her. Lucy simply refuses to come to grips with and maximize her potential. And she's forever swinging the lead and goofing off. But Lucy's potential is already maximized as far as Rick, the warehouse foreman, is concerned. She's forever trying to beat the system, thinks it's the pitch, and considers company discipline a crock. And the office manager an old crock. No wonder that the front office feels that she has the potential for redundancy. Those are not being turned on by her job, invoicing wafers and computers and components. The supervisor is right on, and his mindset is unalterably turned up. He could overkill whenever he finds her fooling around with fancy buttons on his electronic experiment taker gadgetry. And in the background, there's raunchy lover boy Rick, the warehouse foreman. He has an overview of the entire complex in his office. His favorite view, of course, is Lucy the indifferent blonde invoice clerk. His input into her interests closes years, however minimal, whereas Van specializes in input, even if not an output, into computers and otherwise a real receiver. Lucy is forever downgraded and downsizing Rick, especially a thing for his macho image which he is forever trying to maximize on company time. And whenever Lucy puts him down with a cheap shot or a low blow, Rick bites the bullet, undergoes his usual knee-jerk reaction, reassesses his potential, and considers all his options. Not that Lucy reasons with many. Then back to the drawing board. This time he sends Lucy a dozen red roses to try and soften her up and nail her down a date with her. The bottom line, unfortunately for Rick, is that Lucy is infatuated with Van and his electric components. His physical components aren't bad either. She arrives at the moment of truth the first time she saw him wrestling with a temperamental computer printer. Not that temperamental. Lucy was not about to play runner-up to a mere computer. If she played it right, she knew she could get Vance to take the hook. The hook, line, and sinker would follow automatically, along with his silly silicon chip canal. Vance, you see, is high-tech. He has a penchant for digitalizing, computing, and programming everything, including Lucy, just for the fun of it. No wonder the big boss looked at her curiously as if she were automated and robotized or nearly out of this world. In a way, Vance and Lucy are citizens, but Vance is also into robotics, and Lucy is dignitary. The office boy, not yet worldly wise, thinks that means that she's wearing an inflatable bra. The office boy, Flip, is a school dropout, and his parameters do not extend beyond female anatomy. And his frame of reference is the shapely female frame. Right now, he's waiting for the countdown until he's mature enough to ask Lucy for a date. So far, no go.
Then there's the office manager, Mr. Perk. Well, Mr. Perk is very emphatic, dogmatic, and perks up whenever he spies Kitty shake his legs out of the corner of his eye. His office machine is excellent stone, and he never runs down backtracks or lets his hair down. He can't throw a roller because of his ball is a billiard ball. But Mr. Perk has a soft spot, too. His well-disguised soft spot, however, is his word. for the general manager's private secretary, the sexy divorcee, Kitty Collins. He fantasizes about her numbers even in his dreams. One night his fantasies, involving the exotic Kitty, were so real and vivid that his little nocturnal caper resulted in an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation that is not a mere sight. And if he were not married to his wife, Maud, he assures himself, he would indeed maximize the relationship with Kitty. But Kitty looks upon Mr. Kirk as a nude from outer space. His amorous intentions would, of course, come as yesterday's news to the indifferent Kitty. Mr. Kirk is inherently shy with women, especially beautiful ones. And as for his amorous intent, he'd rather die than let it all hang out. As far as Kitty is concerned, it's his oversized stomach that hangs out, and he isn't pulling it in whenever he finds himself in her vicinity. No wonder that Mr. Perk, who enjoys a number of office perks, covets the one perk that is utterly elusive and unattainable as far as he is concerned. As a result, Mr. Perk is frequently down in the dumps, blah, and on a downer whenever Kitty looks through him, or around him, whenever she has to communicate with him, never at him. Inevitably, of course, Mr. Perk will have to get his act together if he wants to make it big with the company, even if not with Kitty. As it is, Mr. Perk had high expectations of making it to the top of the heap before now, or at least being kicked upstairs. But something always seems to distract him whenever he sees the lovely Kitty shinning by. Still, Mr. Perk has to be cautious. One false move or overture towards her and the big boss would stick it to him. And instead of having it made, he could wind up low man on the totem pole, giving the big squeeze, the golden handshake, and winding up out in the cold. So Mr. Perks walks around all uptight, especially when he walks into the stockroom and catches Rick trying to make time with the object of his unrequited affection, Kitty Collins. Obviously, Rick has had it up to here with Lucy and that wimp Vance, who is forever playing around with his computers, chips, wafers, and video images. As far as Vance is concerned, Rick is the real turkey whose only ambition is playing around, and the only thing he can find to play around with is girls. Big deal. He at least has his computers to play around with. And yes, Lucy, who happens to be enamored of him and his silicon chips. Lucy, if the truth were known, is also enamored of Vince's magnificent paycheck, which is infinitely more than lover boy Rick can say for himself. The fool. Everybody in the office knows that Kitty isn't even interested in his magnificent body, let alone his cash. Mr. Perk, of course, seems to put two and two together whenever he sees Rick cozying up to Kitty, and it drives him up the wall and into orbit. As for poor old Fred, the production manager, who, allegedly, is no longer with it, is far too busy being with beautiful Kitty. In fact, he's with her every night, being secretly married to her, and who just happens to be the big boss's favorite daughter. And laugh. Hi, my name is Gary Pig Gold. I've been putting out my fanzine, the Pig Paper, since 1975, and I'd like to send you a sample copy. Send me some samples, and I will. The Pig Paper, 70 Cotton Drive, Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, L5G1Z9. Past tense by T. Angle. He was hanging around the pool hall, collars upturned, playing hooky from school, watching out for the cops and the truant officers, staring into the nowhere future, just drifting. Hair full of grease, stiff and perfect like statues, yeah? But if we look strange, hey, everybody else on the drag all looked the same, like everyone was related. Jimmy's lip used to curl itself up in imitation Elvis style, and he'd say, "Look at man, look at the way they walk. Maybe their feet are square. Could be, you'd think, the robots. Where they all headed anyway, boy?" And I'd squint up
my eyes, trying to get my eyebrows to meet, and clump around behind one, follow it down the sidewalk. Jimmy doubled up in crazy laughter. Then we'd get bored and head down over to the restaurant where we could rustle up a few bucks, maybe grab some beer from the bootleggers and smokes for the night. The restaurant was called Fat City. Had the worst food in town, but the owner always kept the bottle behind the counter and couldn't keep waitresses because he'd get half sloppy sentimental and start thinking about his wife. She nagged him constantly, whirling prayer beads like a lasso, and I guess when that picture of her formed in Buddy's mind, he'd say, "Ah, the hell with it," and make a grab for whoever happened to be the new waitress. There was always a new one due to this, and then long periods out to the street, the girls just weren't safe in Fat City. So that was how Jimmy and I became off and on waiters. $18 a week and all you could eat of slop. Nobody ever left a tip. It was unheard of, but this didn't matter much. Someone would always plug up the jukebox for the afternoon. Probably a few bottles would show up beneath the counter, and we'd sit there with our friends who ordered whatever they could eat and then make out the bills for chips and Coke, turn up the volume, and leave us a couple hours later carrying bags of chicken, chocolate bars, bottles of Coke, and cigarettes, and be paid too. Buddy, by this time, would be drunk, dreaming of anyone but the wife, and wouldn't have known it if the kitchen had exploded. He was relatively happy, so were we, I guess. It was all a matter for everyone only to stay out of the way as she who twirled those prayer beads. So then we'd skip on over to Grant the bootleggers, get us a couple of quarts of Moosehead Pale Ale, and run up the hill to the cemetery and just sit there out of sight of adults and the law, looking out over the entire town, perched there like young vultures, peered down out at the sea beyond and wonder what it was all about. And what the hell was it all about anyway, Jimmy? Yeah, now you're dead too. You put a gun end inside your mouth, and yeah, so did little Sammy and John Alex, that noisy kid what liked trains. I jumped a couple with him, and the slow-most Baptist minister's son had hung himself in the tree. Jerry, I think his name was. And David J. and Goose. Christ, man, we were only about 14 years old, and I remember the wreck, the bloodstains on the car. Whoosh, it had gone clean through the bridge. Jesus H. Christ, there was always something to make us think. Fires, accidents, drowning, outright murder, too. But most of all, it was suicide. I remember them all, every one of them, like we were just trying to be different in a world that you had to conform to and couldn't, like living in a place where everyone was supposed to keep their eyes shut, but you wanted to see. Well, we'd sit there and we'd get drunk and talk up a storm. Our souls were already pretty old, it seemed, and full of tremendous sorrow. Who gave a shit about Latin class? Who the fuck wanted to know about algebra? Our friends, were slipping fast away one by one, and there was nothing anybody would have been able to do to prevent it. It was always a little too late. We just fought like animals to avoid getting caught, so it wouldn't happen to us. Living that outlaw life at that age isn't so bad, and there was plenty of reason for it, too. Up there among the tombstones, we'd go sit on top of Sammy's grave or somebody else's and talk and talk and talk and get the blues out and ask, well, where are we and what is this and why? How the fuck did we get out of here, yeah? And nobody knew. Yeah, it just ain't fair, we'd cry, and then the light would break through from out behind a cloud, and we'd figure it just had to be some sort of an answer. But really it wasn't. It was just the wind blowing everything around like whatever was blowing us around down below. We'd dare the devil up there among the dead like we were some kind of priests interceding for our friends, and we'd say, well, them people down there, what do they know? They don't see that sun. They don't even know where they live. Hey, it's beautiful here. And then when the beer was all gone, we'd fall asleep on the grass, heads propped up on the tombstones. There were days, too. We'd go to the school, and days we'd go home and see the folks, shrug away their heartache. We knew we were hurting them, but how could that matter just then? When we'd leave, they'd stand there, feelings hidden or showing anger, and it'd all just bounce off. We were like lumps of ice, man, that walked and talked. We were colder than Alaska, harder than nails made in hell. We didn't care, plain and simple. And they could all, every one of them, drop stony cold dead, and it still wouldn't matter, and that was that. Why should it? What were we being groomed for if not to sleep among the dying, expanding that big cemetery?
It's still lying down like even now, just as they did all those many years ago. Unable to comprehend it, I was simply a part of history then, just as running part of the way of it.
And now the latest news. Scientists say strange forces buffet Earth. Margreaves Vale, Nova Scotia. Thousands of people from hundreds of different walks of life are experiencing symptoms ranging from occasional loss of hearing and cracking toenails to actually listening in on conversations that aren't there. These and other symptoms are symptomatic of a syndrome that is sweeping the earth and has doctors and scientific communities stumped. While some claim the syndrome is non-existent, others are certain its non-existence is itself non-existent. But everyone has agreed that something mighty strange is afoot. Earth's atmosphere has become so polluted that new forces appear daily in the air. Some of these forces have been explained away by the U.S. Air Force debunking department, but not all of them. The forces surround the planet and apparently are attracted to the brains of human beings. When contact is made, people aren't always aware of what has happened, and this leads to all sorts of difficulties. Suddenly, toenails crack, strange voices may be heard, or any of a dozen other things happen or seem to, even the loss of hearing, just when you're getting to the important part. There's no explanation for this, and one doctor calls the condition